well, we're here with Don Mancini Fiona Dourif. I mean, director, writer, and star of Curse of Chucky, which is actually really good. And I can't believe it was written for DVD straight too. I mean, what happened there and what's the deal?
Well, honestly, I think what happened was that Seed of Chucky didn't do very well. So it's probably really on me. Yeah, it just comes down to money, I think. They crunch numbers and see that. Also, I mean, how our business is changing so much, and there's less money, and and even exhibition is changing, and there's just such a huge migration to seeing movies VOD, all of that enters into it. I mean, I tried to resist the feeling of being demoted to the minor leagues, and just I was just frankly happy to be able to make another film again. And, we had far less money than we had on any of the others. This was a $5 million movie and we had half the time, but it's still $5 million is not nothing. And it's just really about, spending it intelligently. So knowing what I had to work with, I set on the idea of doing a gothic old dark house film, because we'd never really done that specifically with Chucky before, and I thought that situation could be a really cool pressure cooker. Rather than spending a lot of money moving from location to location, just spend the money wisely on one really awesome set. And I think our production designer Craig Sandel's and our DP Michael Marshall it was so much fun shooting on that set. So anyway, so it's direct to DVD, but at least people at FrightFest get to see it in the Empire Theater.
Also, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but after we won the Audience Award at Fantasia, I know that there was a rumor, or at least meetings about giving it a limited theatrical, and there was a few people who were thinking that
we're hoping that might.
Well, I mean, it deserves.
Maybe they made the wrong decision.
As you're saying, it looks fantastic, and the lighting. I mean, I thought it was almost Mario Bava-esque to me.
We're very much in trying to be.
I mean, because I loved it from that. I mean, it just looks so evocative and atmospheric. I mean, that's what I liked. I mean, didn't look like it being skimped on, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I'm so glad that you thought that. Yeah, I mean, we worked really hard to make that happen, and I think, again, it was concentrating all of our resources in this one location so that we were just in the studio all the time, and that really helped us make the most of that limited budget and schedule. But also, with this movie, because the whole mission was to make it scary again rather than the comedy of the last two, it was already a bit simpler, because if you're going to make it scary again, then that implies, okay, we're going to have Chucky solo, and you're going to want to keep him in the shadows a lot more. So, as you know from the last one, I mean, Chucky got very, very chatty, and it's very complicated to just put puppets and do their performances on screen. And so if you have three of them, the complications get exponentially more complicated. So I was on Seed, in addition to just being a first-time director, I couldn't move the camera as much as I wanted to on Seed, because I just had my hands full really putting those puppet performances on screen. But with this one, because there was only one doll and it was a horror movie, then it really allowed me to sort of flex those other muscles and try to emulate Bava and De Palma and Argento and that stuff.
And it seems like a no-brainer having Fiona in it. But when did that actually strike you? Are you thinking, hey, hang on a minute, this is a really good idea?
It didn't strike me until she came in and auditioned. I mean, I just, I had met Fiona a couple of times over the years glancingly. When she was a child, yeah. I knew that she had, because I watched True Blood, and she was on season 4 of True Blood, and I knew her from that, and knew from knowing Brad that his daughter was an actress, and she was in Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, and that's obviously very impressive. But she came in with the 300 other actresses or whatever it was and read for the role, and she blew us away because she was so great. I mean, she reminds me a little bit of Amy Irving, circa Carrie, the Fury. Well, her costume, the white nightgown is direct lift from Amy Irving's
now you've said that, I get it.
Oh, totally, yeah. And I was like, and I showed Fiona and the costume designer as many pictures of Amy Irving with that nightgown, because I just knew that is such an evocative gothic image of this girl in that nightgown in the wheelchair.
Wow. I mean, didn't you say there was nothing from Brad sort of saying, use my daughter, or anything like that? There was nothing like
It's funny, much as I love Brad and am as devoted to Brad, he doesn't really have the power to do that. But, when Fiona read, she came in for the casting director and read for the part of the sister, the bitchy sister.
Oh, right.
And I saw it and I thought, like, oh, that's interesting, but I don't know, maybe she'd really be good for the lead. And so we called her back in and she came and read for the lead and she was awesome. And I just tried to keep a lid on it a little bit because I didn't trust the feeling. I was thinking, am I just being excited for the wrong reasons here? And of course I immediately called Brad, and said, what, Brad, I actually think she could be great as Nika.
And he immediately called me.
Which he was not supposed to do.
He immediately called me and was like, don't tell anybody.
But Fiona, did you have any worries about that, though? I mean,
are you kidding me?
Thinking that you're following in your father's footsteps to a certain degree.
Oh, no. First of all, the idea that I was going to be cast in this movie, even the concept of it, was far too exciting than I could even articulate. Because he's been a part of my identity my whole life. My birthday is the night before Halloween. The fact that I'm the seed of Chucky was the coolest thing about dating me in high school, period. And I capitalized on it. It was it was more of a dream come true than I could even possibly fathom when the idea first really seemed like it was going to take root. And I just didn't believe it. And and so when they said, oh, it looks like it may happen, I didn't believe it until literally I was signing the papers. Because,
I told you. I said,
you told me
got
in
it.
the audition, in the final test, even Don told me. And I still felt like, oh, well, see if the studio's going to watch the test tapes and see if I'm likable or soft enough, which are things that might follow me. I was probably more frightened to do this movie than anything else I've ever done because I cared so much. I cared so much.
But about the whole wheelchair thing, was that easy enough? I mean, did you have to practice for ages doing all that?
This is the
stuff?
second time I've played a paraplegic. And don't ask me what that's about. I have no idea. But I had played a paraplegic 3 years beforehand, and I've for research wheeled around malls. I've gone to a hospital where paraplegics work out, and they've trained me and.
It was a huge boon to the film, actually, that she had that facility.
I'm actually real good on a wheelchair. I can do some stuff. No big deal.
Oh, great.
Because it's she has this constant prop in the film, and props can be very tricky for actors, especially if you have to have one in literally every frame that you're in. And she utterly made that work. I mean, it's a subtle thing, but some of the other, we saw many actresses, and some of them were good. None of them was as good as Fiona, and none of them I believed in the wheelchair. They just felt like
Fake.
they were they were too well adjusted.
I'm not well adjusted,
She's not well adjusted
at all. So I'm kidding. I'm really kidding.
Did it take you long to come up with the actual concept, the story, thinking, because you have avoided, you've sort of ignored the last two films in a way.
It's consistent. Maybe it's better to say it's not inconsistent with any of the mythology that has piled up, including Bride and Seed. We just took care not to make any direct references to certain aspects of the mythology that would break the serious horror spell. We never refer to Chucky's gender-confused child. Although it's funny to imagine in that movie, that suddenly coming up and Nika's like,
what about
really?
Glenda?
Really? And Chucky goes, oh my god, you have no idea.
Fuck you, bitch.
No, because you mentioned, one of the reasons why I loved it, because we were sitting there, and of course you pull an amazing cameo out at the end, and I just thought it was so brilliant. I just loved it because you actually do mention.
There are 2 cameos.
Yeah,
Two
well,
cameos,
yes, but I'm not, yes, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
So, but it's really well done.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And I just burst out laughing. I thought it was just brilliant. So,
Oh, awesome.
So it works on that. So it's very, self-aware as well as you're saying. It sort of delivers the scary goods, but it also sort of like does key into the whole lineage anyway, which is the part.
Yes, I mean, I really wanted it to be a love letter to the fans, really, because this is the 25th anniversary of the franchise, and the fans have been so devoted, and they've been saying that they wanted a scary Chucky movie again for several years, and so that's what we really wanted to build in, a kind of nostalgia factor for it and make kind of the ultimate fan experience for Chucky.
He was going to do a reboot at one. Remember, that was always being mooted. I mean, around the time of Seed, you said that was probably what was going to happen next.
Right, because that was kind of in vogue at that time.
Right.
They're all of the big ones. Texas Chainsaw, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th, et cetera, were all getting the remake treatment. And David Kirshner, our producer, who has produced all of the films, we initially were trying to do that. But it's complicated because we did the first movie at MGM, all of the subsequent ones at Universal. So the rights to the first movie are split between the 2 studios, and that's just a legal quagmire. And we tried to deal with that for about 2 years, and then just after a while, it's like, you know what, we could just grow old and die waiting for this to happen. So why not? And by then, anyway, the kind of remake vogue was passing anyway. And I never wanted to be so repetitive that you just know the story before you even sit down in the theater. So actually, a lot of ideas that were going to be in the strict remake made it into Curse.
Oh, okay, all right. Why do people still love this character so much? Why has he become such an iconic figure? What is it?
I think it's several things. I think one is just our humanity's primal revulsion to the distortion of the human form. There's just something about a doll that occupies that uncanny valley. He's looks like a human, but not. There's just something subtly wrong about it that I think is really effective. I think another thing is that Chucky has traditionally gone after authority figures. A lot of his targets are authority figures, and I think that our young audience really enjoys seeing that before seeing Chucky get his just desserts at the end. And I think Brad Dourif is another crucial part of it. I think that his performance as Chucky is indelible and just kind of delightful. I can't imagine doing it without him.
Also, I think the original script was different than, it didn't have all the voodoo stuff. It was different than what this Chucky is. And initially, I'm going to take this from Don, but it was Chucky was initially this sort of manifestation of a little boy's id, like what a little boy is capable of. And I think that the concept is sort of, subliminally there of the innocence, sort of malicious side of innocence.
The inversion of a fairy tale.
The inversion of a fairy tale, yeah.
Was it an easy film to make for you? I mean, was acting in it, directing it? You're obviously on a tight schedule, budget. Was it
really
pretty
tight
easy?
schedule?
I mean, it was challenging definitely because of that, but I personally enjoyed making this one more than I did Seed. I think part of it was because Seed was my first one, and I was just
Romania.
Exactly. That was tough. I mean, it was just out of my comfort zone, and so it just makes the job tougher in that regard when you don't have any vegetables. Like that. But it was a challenging movie to make, this new one, but I think I just learned some important lessons on the first one, and we prepared it really carefully. I mean, going in knowing we were only going to have 30 days, I storyboarded every shot in the film,
and we had fun. I gotta remind you, Don, at some point, maybe 2 weeks in, we were, I don't know what we were doing, we were getting ready for some shot or some day. And I think you said to me something along the lines of like, I don't know, I'm just in a good mood every day. I feel like I'm going to run off a cliff or something, because it did. I had the time of my life. I mean, I was supposed to be, everybody that I've ever met was supposed to be dead, but I still found a way to have a really good time. I had a really fun
Well, it's going to
time.
play really well tonight. It's on a fabulous screen.
Do you promise?
I don't promise, but if the audience is like us, and they are, it's going to really, really play well.
Oh,
I mean,
good.
it's going to go through. I just know it is. So
It's
it's
I'm
good.
well.
really
our
hard
fingers
to watch
crossed.
myself, so-
It played. We had such a fun time in Montreal. I mean, that was the
sure.
first time we saw it with an audience because we didn't even test this movie with an audience ever.
And you
so
won
that was
audience awards.
And
so-
we won
and we
the
won the
audience
audience award.
award.
So I
Come
guess
on,
it worked out.
How can it not be any different to that?
Well, you know what they say. Even give a bunch of monkeys typewriters,
Right.
and eventually.
No, it's going to play. Because to be honest with you, we went in seeing it thinking, oh my god, a bit trepidatious, but it delivered for us. We thought it was
I'm
just
so
great.
glad. Thank
we came out all smiling. We had a good time with it. I think
That's
that's what the audience does.
awesome.
All I could see was that my teeth are so crooked. That's all I could see when I watch it. It's not always true, but mostly true.
Anyway, Don, Fiona, thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
And it's going to
guys.
play
Thank
really
you.
well today. Promise.
I can't wait. Thank you.